Hello everybody and welcome back to the Fortress of Solitude. Today we're going to be checking out Ultimate Spider-Man issue 2 by Jonathan Hickman and Marco Checchetto. Peter's journey as Spider-Man begins as New York is gripped by the appearance of a black-suited individual who's been seen swinging around town. Hickman runs through this new Spider-Man's whole deal pretty quickly as Peter continues learning to use his powers, something he has quite a problem with since he can't quite get the webbing to work right. He can't swing himself properly so he lands properly, and I like that out of all of it, Peter really just learns that he can take one hell of a beating and wants to use that to his advantage, almost turning his Spider-Man into a bit of a fast-moving tank, something that we've never really seen before, but I'm looking forward to it. I like that this Peter, comes off as smart, is also using ideas that other Peters haven't really thought of, and I guess that's probably because he's a little older than most Peter Parkers, and maybe this is his way of, putting his own stamp on being Spider-Man. He gets to be basically a human wrecking ball. Ben and Jonah meanwhile continue to try and set up their new news network, getting their first story, which is the assassination attempts on Wilson Fisk, coming to the conclusion that someone has a vendetta against Fisk and most of his shady dealings, and they want to find out why. They also figure out that this black-suited individual they've heard swinging around town might also factor into it, and maybe he's a distraction to draw attention away from Fisk and his dealings, something which interests both men greatly. I absolutely love what Hickman is doing with the Jonah-Ben dynamic. They're just an elderly married couple, and he's building off of what we saw in that first issue where they're both kind of old guys who've been around the block and kind of seen everything, and while it's changed one of them, the other one is still very hopeful that the truth is still out there, and that's just a great dynamic for these characters, especially Ben, who never gets anything in these stories because he's always used as the plot device that pushes Peter to become Spider-Man, so to have him around is just so interesting and opens so many new avenues of storytelling for the character. Peter meanwhile meets his first villain, and it's the Shocker, immediately falling into classic Peter Parker as he annoys the shit out of the Shocker, but also thanks to being so nervous and not understanding how this sort of works, the hero-villain dynamic, he almost gets killed as Shocker ends up lying to him and kind of punking him a little bit. Getting to see this all real early stuff for the character is fantastic, and I'm glad Hickman chose to do this and not just kind of jump ahead to Spider-Man already set up in New York. Peter has no clue what he's meant to do now that he's got these powers and what he was really meant to do in the life that was stolen from him, and I find that really interesting since he hasn't had that whole power responsibility talk or a tragedy that spurs him to become Spider-Man like Uncle Ben dying. It's such an interesting take on Spider-Man that is doing all of these familiar things that we've seen in other iterations. They're just doing them out of order because everything in this universe is changed, and I like that there is a chaos to that, and Peter understands that there is a chaos to it and understands that there should be a way for him to maneuver through this, but he isn't sure how to because he never had that life. Peter's Spider-Maning takes a turn when May discovers her father's nightly activities, ending up getting quite scared when she is confronted by this black-suited individual in their lounge room. Again, this is just another thing that I'm happy Hickman is getting into right away and not trying to do the cliche thing where Peter is hiding it from his family, and while only May knows this issue, I'm sure the others will find out in the coming issues as well. The way he writes the situation is really quite cool as well, treating May not like a child at all but like an adult, and I like that Peter is able to talk to her like an adult and realize that he did scare his daughter and that's not really a good thing, and it's her who also suggests that his costume be a little bit more brighter and maybe not so dark. Again, it's familiar things, Spider-Man developing his costume but done in a different way and at a different time in the character's origins. It's just so interesting how it's all coming together. Fisk's storyline meanwhile takes a big turn as Henry Dugari, the Captain Britain of 6160 and lackey of the Maker, comes to town since Fisk needs a distraction to throw off interested parties to his shady dealings, because thanks to these assassination attempts by the Green Goblin, people are starting to look his way and look into his dealings and why someone would be attacking him. I love this tie into the larger Ultimate Universe, and it serves as a reminder that in this world, even someone like Wilson Fisk is under someone's thumb, someone more powerful than him. This feels like Hickman also setting Fisk up as a sort of turn of allegiance, or sort of for a big part where he'll eventually throw off his oppressor's chains and kind of turn on the Maker and his people. And maybe even Spider-Man might team up with him to do that. I think that could definitely be a very real possibility, being that Peter's whole deal now is to take back the life that was stolen from him by the Maker, the guy who is running Fisk. Spider-Man meanwhile isn't having a good time of it, as he is bested again by the Shocker, as again the hero buys into his sob story about his wife. It's pretty funny that the Shocker in the Ultimate Universe isn't just some badass who can go toe-to-toe with Spider-Man. He's just a guy who's good at lying and taking advantage of Spider-Man's naivete. This is probably my favourite part of the book, where Spider-Man is just ready to give up. He's realized he's not too good at this whole superhero thing. Villains aren't really his thing. He can't figure out how to deal with them. He's scared his child and everything. He can't figure out the webbing. But he finds a note from May that tells him that maybe he should just try these different colors and give it another go. And I kind of like that. I kind of like that it wasn't some big huge speech. It's just his daughter kind of telling him just give it another go. It's really nice, really simple, and yeah, I really quite like that, and hopefully we get to see a bit more of that throughout this series. And maybe they even forego the whole power and responsibility speech that we usually get, and we just get these smaller, more intimate moments with his family, and how his family are the thing that gives him the power to be Spider-Man. I'm really intrigued to see how Hickman is going to use this early stuff to inform this Peter's version of Spider-Man as well, since he's tried the quips and fast talking and, you know, approaching villains in a bit more of a friendly, jovial manner, and both times it's not worked at all. Both times he has almost been killed. If I was a betting man, I'd think that Peter plans on using the more colourful costume to distract the villains more than his quips usually do, and then use the fact that he can take a beating and is kind of like a walking tank to win the day. Either way, I'm looking forward to what Hickman does with Peter's next evolution as his journey as Spider-Man continues. I'm also hoping that Hickman dives a little bit more into this Green Goblin, since we already know it's Harry, and here he never really appears. He appears in one shot of the entire book, and we obviously learned that he has some vendetta against Fisk, and I would very much like to know what, since right now he's just been kind of floating about between both the issues that are out now. We don't really know much about him. I'd like to see a bit more about Harry and why he's become the Green Goblin, and hopefully we do in the coming issues. All in all, Ultimate Spider-Man issue 2 kept up the pace of that first issue and dived headfirst into Peter Parker's journey as Spider-Man, doing some really familiar things in some new and interesting ways, while also giving Peter's supporting cast quite a bit to do. And something that I'm very much looking forward to is seeing more of Jonah and Ben, since their whole deal and whole relationship and dynamic is just so interesting and something we have never seen in a Spider-Man comic before. So that really excites me that we're getting to see something brand new and fresh in this take of Spider-Man. I'm going to give this issue a 10 out of 10. Definitely check it out, and if you haven't checked out issue 1, check out my review for it linked here in the video. And also while you're at it, why not check out the rest of the Ultimate Universe with Ultimate Black Panther. It's another great book from Brian Hill that fills in what Wakanda has been up to in the Ultimate Universe, and it too is off to a cracking start.